Okay, hello, my name is Abid Quereshi. I'm a certified enterprise coach with the Scrum Alliance, and I want to share a story with you. It's something we tried out at a company in France, hence the French rugby jersey. And of course, we're going to be talking about Scrum. So the rugby jersey is appropriate. And also, the topic is Organigram Adaptif. This is about agility despite scale. I say despite scale because scaling up and agility are pretty much diametrically opposed to each other. It's like saying Indy racing with SUVs or off-roading with Indy cars. Unless you're scaling down, agility and scaling up would be diametrically opposed to each other. And we'll talk about why. We'll start off by talking about a traditional org chart. So if you are a small company or a startup, so when I joined a startup once when I moved to the UK, I was working for a company, I was employee number 7. And we were working on everything. I was doing back-end development, front-end development, testing, gathering requirements, even marketing and pre-sales. And we didn't really have the need for a manager. We would just speak to each other directly, and that makes sense. However, if you were to hire a manager, it would possibly slow things down a little bit, not by a huge amount, but you would see a little bit having to go through your manager could slow you down. So, but as the company starts to grow, what happens is they start to say, okay, well, how's anything going to get done? Surely we need to hire some managers, all right? So we start to grow, and there we go. We've got some managers, and then we say, okay, well, now who's going to manage the managers? And there we go. So this is a org chart. This is very common. You probably know if you work for any large organization, you know who reports to you and who you report to. This is how they organize people. And often these divisions are broken down into divisions of labor. For example, testing and architecture and governance and different functions within the organization. But now look how long it takes to get anything done. If the goldfish wants to talk to one of the monkeys, they say, well, don't talk to the monkey directly. You have to go through me. I'm your manager, and I will speak to their manager, who will then speak to them. But it takes a lot longer to get things done, right? So this will be less agile. What we're advocating is direct communication. The most efficient and effective way of conveying information to and with the development team is through direct communication. So this is what we're encouraging. Precisely when we need direct communication, that's exactly when the organizations introduce indirect communication. These org charts are common sense. And what we're presenting here is going to challenge common sense. Someone has to challenge common sense. Common sense used to say that the earth was flat, right? And someone challenged that. So that's what we're going to do here. These org charts, although they might be common, they might not be that sensible, simply because the efficiency and effectiveness of getting things done is going to be impeded by these. So we're advocating is direct communication, people speaking to each other directly. However, how do you avoid people going off in different directions? Well, there are 2 prerequisites to self-organization. One is you need to have a clear goal, and the second is feedback. Now, the clear goal is, at least in the context of a Scrum, is provided by the product owner. The product owner has to make a clear and unambiguous purpose of why we're doing this. And then the Scrum Master has to remove barriers, if those barriers exist. They will be accountable for making sure that stakeholders and users can work with each other directly, because we said the most efficient and effective way of conveying information to and within the development team is through direct communication. So the Scrum Master has to remove those barriers and free the information so it can move around the organization very, very quickly. Okay, so provided you have a clear goal provided by the product owner, and the Scrum Master has done their job of removing barriers, then you can do that. Now, this idea came from, this idea was promoted in 2001. We're now just over 20 years since this famous document was written at a conference called LWP's 2001. LWP was Lightweight Processes, which eventually came to be known as this conference here. And they were promoting lightweight methods, lightweight processes. And the problem they were trying to solve, you can see here, if you want to pause it and have a look at what's being said here. This is Alistair Cockburn, who's one of the authors of this famous document known as the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. He was saying that not only are CIOs convinced that they need lots of paperwork to be safe, but there's prophecy there. But there's also needs to be a lot of bodies as well, bodies which these consultancies are more than happy to provide. With all those bodies, you need lots of managers. So many managers, you need lots of paperwork, and now you're tracking development hours in 6-minute increments. So what he's advocating really is less is more. And you need to roll your own process rather than using something off the shelf. Anything off the shelf is loaded and bloated. It just simply isn't mean and lean. It's just not agile. So this is what we're trying to oppose: adding more people, more managers, and more documentation. Okay, so if that's the problem of organizations, and we're trying to aim to achieve agility, we're going to take you back to the original definition of what agile actually means. Because nowadays, a lot of times people will begin their sentence when they just start describing what agile is, they start to begin by saying, to me, agile is about this and that. To me, agile is about this. Now, if everyone says to me, if agile is about this, then we've ended up with so many definitions that the word has no meaning anymore. It's a funny thing about words. The more meanings you give a word, the less meaning it has. Okay? You keep on adding more and more definitions to a word, it's lost all meaning. It becomes so vague and ambiguous that I don't know what you're talking about. So for that, we go back to the dictionary, and the dictionary clearly states it's your ability to intentionally change shape and change direction. Well-coordinated movement. So on that thread, we have to look at what would oppose agility. What would stop your ability to change shape and change direction easily? One, so we're going back to some fundamental laws here of physics. So we just went back to the fundamental definition in the dictionary. So this is very much a back to basics presentation. Changing speed and changing direction. That's what is your ability to change shape and change direction, change speed is what we call agility. And that comes down to this fundamental equation, which is things like to do what they're already doing, right? Newton's first law states that things like to do what they're already doing. They have momentum. This symbol here, rho, is momentum. Momentum is a product of your mass and your velocity. So if you want to increase your ability to change speed and change direction, then you're going to have to reduce your mass, or you're going to have to reduce your velocity. The faster you go, the less agile you are. The bigger you are, the less agile you are. So this is now approaching common sense. Never mind what people say agility is out there. Agility is about, I don't know, using sticky notes or using Jira, or about stand-up meetings or anything like that. As agility is really coming down to, in physics, is your ability to change direction and change shape and change speed. So scaling up, of course, will reduce your agility. This is why we call this presentation is subtitled Agility Despite Size, Despite Scale. The faster you go, the bigger you are, the less agile you are. That's a natural consequence. A Titanic that wants to avoid the iceberg will be less able to avoid that iceberg. Even though they see it coming and they're heading straight for it, they're not going to be able to change direction easily because they're just too big. The next thing that will reduce your ability to change shape and change direction is friction. So this is another fundamental law. This was on Newton's first law. This is now approaching Newton's second law. Friction is a product of a constant. The constant is called the coefficient of friction. And the normal force. The normal force is the force that's pushed down from the top. If you drag a brick on the ground and you push down on it, it'll be harder to push because it's got friction. But if you alter the angle slightly, what's going to happen is it'll be easier to push, but still the normal force is still present. But what if you were to have no top-down force? Then you'll be able to drag it across fairly easily. It still has its own weight, but if you reduce it to 0, you're going to have no friction. So this is where agile transformations often fail. They're top down, and they're only going to be met with resistance and friction. So let's say we could, given this, what if we could not only reduce our friction, but have it be driven from the bottom? So rather than top-down transformations, you ask people who are going to be who would normally be in large organizations the object of change. They would now become the subject of the change. They would be the doers. Would be the change agents within the organization. What would happen then is it turns the equation completely around, and you have another form of Newton's second law, which is F equals ma, where the force is coming from below. The acceleration is coming from below, and now you have accelerated change, and the top simply facilitates that change. It just gets out of the way. So this is what we're trying to do: is drive change from the bottom. And a lot of organizations fail because they try to drive change from the top, and they expect the bottom to facilitate. But really, it needs to be the opposite if you want to achieve agility and less friction. So here, friction disappears, and instead you have acceleration. And this will help reduce the cost of change. I asked Kent Beck once, did this movement of extreme programming, did it come from lean? Did it come from Japanese manufacturing? And he said, maybe, but really it's about reducing the cost of change. Okay, so we tried this at an organization in France where we noticed there were a lot of bottlenecks, a lot of divisions of labor that you saw, for example, before in the org chart. We had the company that I worked for was they do scanning equipment for bags in airports. You all use their products. When you put your bag through their machines, they will scan the extra. They pretty much have a monopoly in every airport. And these are the teams, the departments as they were at the time. They weren't really teams; they were departments. We had a physics department, you had a hardware department, you had an R&D department, you had software department. The software department, you had people who use the interface, who would create the user interface, and then you had specialist software, image processing people. So these are highly specialized people, but none of them could get their work done on their own. They were highly interdependent. So by having these things were slow because of the dependencies, people weren't talking to each other directly anymore. So what they did was we said, let's scale up. Where things are too slow, so we're going to add more people to it. This is prophecy, what Alistair Coburn was talking about earlier. In that quote I shared with you. And so nothing's getting done because team A is working on stuff, but they need something from team B. So you got two teams working on item A, and they need something from team B, maybe an API changed or something. But team B is saying, sorry, we're busy. We're working on team B stuff, and if we don't get our stuff done, it's our neck on the line. So we'll help you, but after we've done team B stuff. So team B is working away, and they realized there was actually someone on team C who used to be on team B, and only they know how to use this particular code or this particular aspect. So they would go to team C and say, we need to borrow so-and-so. And team C says, sorry, we can't. We're busy. We have to deliver team C stuff. If we don't get this done, we're going to be in trouble. So team C's working away, and they realize that they need access to a test environment. And there's only one test environment being used by team A. So they said, team A, look, we need this test environment. Otherwise, we're not going to get our work done. Team A says, sorry, well, we need these test environments, and we'll give them to you after we're done. But right now, we are in trouble. In fact, we're blocked. So first, let us sort this out, and we'll try to get you these test environments as soon as possible. So what's happening is Team A is blocked by Team B is blocked by Team C, and Team C is blocked by Team A. Sound familiar? So we know this in computer science as deadlock, where nothing is getting done. And the funny thing about management is the knee-jerk reaction is nothing's getting done. I think we need more teams. Yeah, we need to scale up. No, you don't need to scale up. You need to stop having separate teams. What we need instead, what we did was we dissolved our departments. So the physics department, the hardware department, our product was a mixture of several different we had image processing people, we had hardware people, supply chain people, and we decided to dissolve those departments for the purpose of delivery and instead create a visibility of what was coming down the pipe. and we had to prioritize. So we took this here, this large funnel, okay, and we now narrowed it down, which means it's bad news for A and B. They're going to have to wait. But, you know, like in life, we have to queue up for everything. Otherwise, if everybody jumps in at the same time, nothing's going to get done, right? So we have to queue up. Someone has to prioritize that C is the most important thing, and everyone is working on C. So it looks like you have separate teams, but you don't. We actually have a team of teams. It's a single team focused on a single purpose. And these teams are shaped based on the nature of the work that's coming down the pipe. So if the work was heavy on physics work, we made sure the physics people were on that team, virtual team, that short-lived 2-week team. And the image processing people and the hardware people were added to that team for a short period of time in order to serve the physics work. And then after 2 teams, after 2 weeks, the team was potentially disbanded to accommodate the next piece of work. Maybe there's another priority. We have to upgrade some hardware, and we have to comply with something. Well, guess what? The hardware becomes the focus, and any software that needs to support that, because these things don't work in isolation, any camera work, image processing work, any R&D or testing work, we recreate a new team based on this. Now, we are not actually creating the team. And initially, we were, but the idea is to get the teams to use what's called an anarchy approach. Now, anarchy's got a bad rap. Anarchy's got this, it's idea that, it's chaos. It's not chaos. Anarchy is a legitimate form of government where people come together to solve a problem. And after the problem is solved, they disband. Okay? And things get done rather than going through centralized government in order to get things done. So that was the idea here, eventually progressing to an anarchy approach. I know it sounds awful, doesn't it? But it works to get things done. And so people would be able to see what was happening coming down the pipe and reorganize themselves based on the nature of work. That was our end state, our ideal end state. Right now, we had people who were actually designated to watch what was coming down the pipe and react and form the teams ahead of time and say, okay, well, in December next year, December, in 2 months' time, we need to have a team that looks like this because this is the nature of the work that was coming down. So this was very difficult. So the idea is that basically a Scrum working as a single unit. And you can have a Scrum of Scrums, but they're still a single unit. They're not made up of units. They're actually a single unit working in the same direction as opposed to competing with each other for people and for resources and for time and for test environments. You're now working as a single unit towards a common goal, which is to deliver C. Now, this was going to be difficult because of labor laws in France. And this is where Scrum does not go. Scrum does not go into labor laws. So somebody has to tackle this because you cannot simply strip someone from their title in France. Some of these, so organizations have pretty much understood a job for life. And in order to, someone's earned the title of team lead, and it says in their contract they're team lead, and you're constantly disbanding the team, well, I haven't got any people to lead anymore. So this is politically threatening. So this was a difficult thing, but there was an understanding that was gained, and somehow we managed to get through that. I don't want to go into the details. Part of this initiative, however, was increasing the team size offshore, so that there was an effort to simultaneously scale up while we were doing this, while we were doing Organigram Adaptif, the adaptive org chart. And that's where we encountered a lot of resistance, because while we knew that it was going to be a delicate situation in France because of labor laws, and we did plenty of consultation with the people in labor laws. So we met in France. So we managed to reduce the friction and prepare people that, you're going to be, if you're going to be a team lead or something like that, or you're going to be a senior, it's going to be for a very short period of time. Of course, in your company, you can keep your titles and stuff like that. That's fine for the purpose of remuneration and feedback and stuff like that. But when it comes to product development, we need everyone to leave their egos at the door. So we managed to reduce that friction. The problem was we didn't consult our growing team in India. And in India, although they don't have labor laws, which protect people from changing the roles continuously, we do have cultural barriers. someone has earned their right to be a team lead or an architect or a specialist in a particular area after 10 years of service, culturally, you can't just strip them of that. You can't say, well, right now there's no coding work. There's lots of coding work to do right now. So you can't say I'm an architect. I don't code anymore. So that was really difficult so that's where we really struggled. The other place where we really struggled was here. So the Scrum team is a single unit. So as you can see here, a single unit moving in the same direction. But there is one point of accountability, and that is the product owner. The product owner's job is to maximize the value of the product. They're accountable for that. They can get involved in any aspect of product development, but the one thing they're accountable is for maximizing the value of the product. So we had product owners. Before that, we had a bunch of people who had a lot of money, and they had pretty much, it was sales driven. We had account managers who had money from their customers and say, I need this. And this poor development team had to service them. And another account manager says, I need this for my account. Someone else says, I need for this for my account. And they're basically acting as proxies for the customer. And what happened was they ended up with 14 branches of code. 14 branches of code. And the same small team in France was maintaining basically 14 versions of the software because there was no product ownership. We were allowing customers to dictate what would happen to the product. So we made sure we had strong product ownership. We trained them up on product ownership. So now this person is in charge of the prioritization and being able to tell account managers and customers, get in the queue. I know what you want is important, but right now this is the most important thing. Because they're accountable for the 5, 10, 20-year roadmap for this product. So we did that, and we had a trained product owner who then prioritized the work and then went to the team and said, okay, so this is the single highest priority item. We now need to allow people to self-organize and or at least create a team which is organized around the nature of the work. It could be this new compliance that we have to achieve to comply with some sort of X-ray emission standards. And so all of the work is going to be structured around that. And the teams are going to be structured around that. The org chart is going to adapt to get that done. So we formed the team, we started to estimate the work, and we're about to begin the work, and the head of development says, okay, so this is how much it's going to cost for us to deliver these features. And the product owner said, I don't have any money. Okay, so what now? Well, so the head of development said, okay, well, go and find some money. In the meantime, we have a bunch of account managers who are waiting for stuff to get done. We'll continue to service their needs. So effectively, nothing happened. The entire change was really, we forgot one key ingredient. Who holds the money? Our product owner wasn't really the product owner. It was the account managers, because they got the money directly from the account, from their customers to make these changes, and so they held all the power. So it's really important going forward. The product owner is the one who has the authority to determine what the money is going to be spent on. If they don't have that authority, then you're going to have, again, these customers who are running with the agenda and pulling the product in several different directions. If you want to know who the real product owner is, you have to follow the money. Who's in control? Where the money's coming from, that's another matter. Scrum doesn't really get into that. But in terms of who has the authority of spending, what are we going to? We have a limited budget per sprint. This is how much it's going to cost to have this team to do this work in a 2-week period or a 3-week period, or what is that money going to be spent on? Whoever has that final authority is the product owner, irrespective of who you call the product owner, right? The one who's calling the shots there. So that's where we struggled. So a few lessons there is departments are organizing people according to departments is great for efficiency. It's great for factory work, but for creative and problem-solving work, for complexity, we need to allow teams to form themselves around the nature of the work and work as a single team, and that's how you can scale up. And the other thing is keep into account your cultural barriers as well as your legal barriers to allow this, impediments that would prevent you from allowing teams to self-organize. And the third thing is follow the money. Okay. So we were up against 200 years of management thinking in this. We had some success, but those were the struggles that we had. And so now it's an opportunity for you to ask questions and to share your own stories.